welcome to our coverage of the Heroes of the Storm Balance patch notes for March 29th, 2022. My name is Jazzalene, and joining me to cover these notes are the wonderful Weary, the WildHeart CCL healer player, and we also have the NA Griefer, or Stormly Griefer, and Role Swapper Extraordinaire, ex-WildHeart Omega tank player, Funz, joining us to cover these patch notes. Let's kick things off with Anubarak.
Yeah, sorry, I gotta hop in this. Nubrak is like one of my favorite tanks at the moment. He's just really good and competitive. Um, Basically, like these changes to me were very weird because I think the best build right now is just match the W talents. Level 4, a little situational. You don't always need to go move speed, but I think most games on a Nubrak you should be going W1, W7. But basically, what I think happened is Beetle builds was pretty powerful in the Storm League matches and stuff. And I guess W build was underperforming. So this is pretty nice for competitive Nubrak. I mean, they made his spell armor just that little bit better. I really like the E change at 7 because in my head, like E7 is just not competitive because the shield was just not enough for. So maybe we see a bit of a change up in the builds here. But the level 20 change you can literally ignore. There is literally no reason to take that 20. Um, every Anubrak always goes what's it called? The rewind. There's no reason not to go rewind.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw buffs across the board, right? I would say all of these talents except the level 20, like Fun said, that talent's not relevant at all. But the rest are pretty solid talents at this point, even like before the buffs. I personally don't think W build is necessarily like the best or default. But W build is fine. Like Beetle build is fine. You can go like Beetles at 1 and then you can go E at 7. I think that's totally fine. I think E at 7 is a good talent. But this buff definitely helps as well. As far as the meta changes goes, Anubu was already like at the very least tier 8 tank, and this probably just busts him up like half a tier. I don't know if that brings them into S, but very close at least. I think this overall the changes made here though is kind of demonstrates the philosophy of this overall patch, which is like they're not really necessarily looking at top competitive play as much as like the average Storm League games like stats, right? I had to fact checked just to see like what the win rates are, and Beetle build is like about 51% compared to like 44 or 46 for the other builds. And that surprisingly actually also holds even in like Diamond Master, which surprised me a little bit.
Okay, moving on to Johanna. She has her Zealous Glare bonus damage reduced from 125% to 75%. We also have the Roar at 13, maximum punish damage bonus reduced from 175 to 150. Blessed Hammer, basic ability cooldown reduction reduced from 3 to 2.5 seconds. And Heaven's Fury at 20, maximum targets hit per barrage is increased from 4 to 6, cooldown reduction per bolt reduced from 2 to 1 seconds, and damage reduced from 68 to 50. Does this finally put Johanna off of that first ban, first pick position we've seen her in lately, guys?
For I think like Johanna, the main problem was level 1 does way too much damage, right? And then level 20 resets like you have low cooldown, you give unstoppable, you heal a bunch, and you do damage. These are the main problems Johanna was having, and I think this change does address most of those to some extent. I think 1 is still probably the better talent. The 13 changes don't matter too much. I think those talents were fine, and you slap on the wrist doesn't really hurt too much either. The level 21, I looked at the tick rate a little bit. I think this does nerf that talent to some extent. Your CDR is not going to be as good like on an average case. If you hit your optimal case, which I think is rarely going to happen unless something really insane is going on, like you're super coordinated and the enemy is also clumping, like you're literally hitting 6 people for the entire duration for 8 ticks, then at that point you get a basic full reset. But overall, I think this is good enough to see that like you don't have to first ban first pick this in Storm League. It'll be map dependent. Good wave clear maps, you probably still want to pick her up early. Where wave clear doesn't necessarily matter as much, you probably don't have to prioritize her as much. So we'll see. Probably, I would say tier S to tier A.
Okay. Funz, do you have any different takes here on Johanna?
I agree with pretty much everything Ray said. To me, like this is one of my favorite changes throughout the patch. Like, yes, I love abusing Johanna, but it was just a little bit not fair. Just her damage output.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are overall like pretty good changes, and I don't think I don't I don't know. I don't think she'll be first ban first pick, but I still think she's gonna be a very highly contested pick because at the end of the day, like she's still Johanna. Just insane wave clear. She still has her same survivability as before. And I mean, falling 20, even if you don't get that full, the full big reset play, it's still on a like 10, 15-second cooldown if you had a really good falling sword, which is like pretty insane for a tank ult. I still think it's one of the strongest tank ults in the game, and I think Johanna's still gonna be pretty prevalent.
Those handful of Johanna mains out there are going to be excited they can finally play her once again. Moving
Yeah.
on here, we have Artemis. This one was a surprise to me. Artemis nerfs here. The health reduced on him from 2525 to 2490. Health regen reduced from 5.26 to 5.19. His shield overlord trait, the shield is reduced from 385 to 365. And then on top of that, they also touched his level 4 shield surge, where the shield bonus increased from 75% to 80%. Artemis, this was a surprise to me because this is not a hero you typically see in competitive at all. He doesn't really perform there, but apparently he's kicking butt in Storm League.
Yeah, this is a great example of balancing around Storm League basically, because a big difference between Storm League and competitive, right, is everybody's in comms, everybody is working together to win the game. So focus fire is way better in competitive, and when Artanis gets focused down, he dies. He just straight up dies. Like there's nothing he can do. So I guess he's just gonna be weaker in competitive. In Storm League, like honestly, don't think these nerfs are that bad. Like on paper, it honestly doesn't seem that bad to me. Like I still think he's gonna be semi-strong in uncoordinated games. With the level 4 talent, it was a pretty nice change just to get that little bit more survivability since the shield got nerfed in general.
Yeah.
Um, Overall, it's just I don't know. It's Artanis. It's gonna be pretty low tier. Still, I guess even worse now.
All right, Weary, what's your thoughts on Artanis?
Yeah, so this is a little bit similar to the Nubrak one, I would say. As I was alluding to, like, I'm guessing if we look at probably gold and below, Artanis was winning a little bit too many games. So he got a bit of a health nerf, but other than that, he's kind of like the same thing, right? There's no major changes. As far as like Master Plus Storm League or competitive plays, he's just gonna be a niche burn hero on BOE, or he might be picked on a point hold map, and he'll suffer the same issues in that he dies to ganks because you have to use your shields to like trade. So, yep, pretty much the same hero, no difference.
All right. Easy peasy. Let's move on then. We got Thrall up next. His health was increased from 1876 to 1896. He got a bit of a buff on his health regen, 3.91 to 3.95. Then they also touched his level 20 elemental momentum. Cooldown reduction against heroes increased from doubled to tripled. Tell me a little bit about this. What does this mean for Thrall?
I didn't test this change, I have to admit, but just reading this, I feel like there's literally no difference. We can just like skip this section.
GG, go next.
I disagree. You see, these are straight buffs for Artanis. Thrall main tank. I'm just saying.
Thrall main tank.
I haven't been able to play it yet. I tried to play it today in a scrim. I was subbing. Didn't get to, but I'm just saying, Thrall main tank slightly buffed. A little bit less burst.
All right. We'll keep going here. We have Varian up next. He has his heroic strike cooldown reduction from basic attacks increased from 2 to 3 seconds. They also touched his level 1 Lion's Maw. Damage bonus per stack increased from 6 to 7. Colossus Smash, one of his level 4s or his ultimates that you could pick up, was also touched. The damage is increased from 160 to 185, and also the armor reduction increased from 20 to 25. I am a little bit nervous to be running into Colossus Smash variants in my games now, but what are you guys? Are you guys worried about it? Is this something that is going to be legit now?
I think it's a little bit legit, a little bit legit. I think it's very niche, but in those like niche scenarios where you're just absolutely bodying some tank or like you're smashing on the BOE, so you can get that race in, it just makes it a little bit better.
Hmm.
Overall with these changes, I'm personally very happy to see. I love playing variant. With the heroic strike uh production increase, it literally makes all, well, not twin blades. It makes taunt and colossal smash just a little bit more damage output, which is always nice, right?
Okay.
And then with the Q1 buff, it makes him in those burst scenarios just that little bit more burst damage on top of the taunts or whatever. Overall, these are very, very nice changes for Varian. I expect to see a little bit more play out of him. I don't know if this is necessarily a whole like tier upgrade for Varian, but I think Smash might see some play at the very least.
Maybe some more build variety out of variant instead of just your standard taunt. Weary,
Yeah.
what's your take here?
Yeah, so I would say Varian probably was in a pretty similar state
Hmm.
as Nubrak as far as like competitive goes. So these changes are probably not necessarily warranted. That being said, they're also not like insanely broken. The Smash one, we'll see how that does, right? But the other two are like small changes. Um, so I know, I think EU goes Q a bit more as far as taunt variant goes. I think you should just go parry at one, but that's just me personally. So as far as the trait change goes, it matters a bit less if you go W at one, right?
Hmm.
But it does help Q build a little bit more. So as far as the damage goes for a Smash, I'm sure Justin is very happy somewhere that especially that I think that 25 auto attack damage increase is actually probably a bigger part than the 5 extra armor reduction. You're actually doing a massive amount of auto attack damage when you go smash, and you're just healing off of it because of your level 7. So we'll see how this goes. I think it could be a niche like Stormleak pick, and could be pretty fun, pretty solid here and there. I don't think it'll be like meta breaking or anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on into our healers, we have Alex Straza. A little bit changed on her here. She has her base, her Q Gift of Life additional functionality. Alex Straza's health regeneration is increased by 150%. And then some level 16s touched here. Tough Love on her Q. Changed functionality. Gift of Life grants its target 10 armor for 2.5 seconds, increased to 30 armor while Alex Straza is above 75% health. They also touched Overprotective. The shield duration is increased from 3 to 6 seconds. And they touched the Draconic Discipline. Additional functionality there with increased Dragon Queen's basic attack healing by 50%. We'll start with Weary on this one because you are the healer main here. Is Alex meta now?
I have to admit, I haven't had the opportunity to test it very thoroughly, but I'm gonna say no. These changes, I think her 16 talents were pretty good already, and these changes do add a bit more power into them. Um, but I think her core problem remains the fact that when you're a dragon, you're really OP, and when you're not a dragon, you're just kind of meh. And I don't think these changes solve that. So I think this might push her to see a bit more play on relevant maps where you want to fight over objectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Infernal being the classic one.
Mm-hmm.
Volskaya occasionally. We've seen like a lot. I guess there's no Volskaya in Stormlink, but in competitive, the Volskaya meta has kind of shifted to be a lot more like split pushy. So people don't even fight over objectives anymore,
Yeah.
right? So but yeah, I mean, there's just gonna be Alex OTPs, and I'm sure they're happy. But otherwise, I think she's pretty much the same hero as well.
Funz, anything to add to that?
No, not much. It's just these changes to me like don't really affect much in the grand scheme because Alex's like identity, like we already said, is still the
Mm-hmm.
same. Just OP dragon, not OP if not dragon. So I don't really think these do too much. It's just quality of life, right? Alex players who, walking away pretty happy, but overall I don't think it matters too much.
Okay. Moving on to Rhaegar here. This is another one of those heroes we've been seeing. It's like basically Joe Rhaegar ban almost every match. But they are touching him once again. Like they touched him in the last patch. They didn't touch Johanna. They're going to touch him again in this patch. And finally, Johanna got her nerf. But let's take a look at Haegar now. He does have his base health reduced from 1935 to 1900. His health regen reduced from 4.03 to 3.96. And the purge cooldown increased from 45 seconds to 60 seconds. On top of that, they also went in and touched some talents here as well. His level 1 Colossal Totem bonus health reduced from 50% to 25%. The level 4 Earth Living Enchant healing reduced from 200 to 160. They also touched the level 7 Ground Totem, where attack speed reduction reduced from 30% to 25%. And they touched Purification as well, where Purge's cooldown reduction increased from 10 to 15 seconds. And then last but not least, the level 16 Earthgrass Totem, damage reduced from 145 to 115. So a lot of totem talents touched here. We'll start with Weary once again here, as he is the healer main. I know he's been playing a lot of Haegar these days. What does this mean for Haegar?
Yeah, so I am similar to Johanna. Haegar's been pretty dominant in the meta as far as like first ban, first picks goes, right? These changes I think are pretty warranted, and we'll see if it's enough to like remove him from the top. I think it is. My personal take is totem build is probably still solid, but not absolutely dominant. You can still pick it in situations, but it's not going to nearly be as impactful as it was before. The purge change baseline 45 to 60, I think, is actually a pretty big nerf as well. It's a lot more punishing to use your cleanse offensively now, I would say. And I would have honestly liked to see some quality of life changes here. Maybe a bigger range and potentially like a separate button for offensive cleanse and like actually using the unstoppable on your ally. I don't know if it's just me, but occasionally I do fat finger, and like when I want to cleanse somebody, I actually just purge a nearby enemy instead, and it feels really bad.
Oops.
Especially like when your range
That's
is really
literally
short.
the worst feeling in the world.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. I've already been like a Z build taker. I think most people would say like that's a pretty unpopular opinion. I think in situations, especially in competitive, like you really don't get to like man up and press totem sometimes, and you can harass their tank, but I feel like in the way that I envision the 5v5 team fights goes, it's not necessarily like game winning, especially when these days like people are drafting around you. Like you go Haegar first pick, they're gonna say like, okay, we're gonna pick a bunch of heroes that aren't affected by totem, right? So Z build remained untouched here. I think Z build is pretty strong. At level 1, you get instant mount speed. You're actually like 40% movement speed, and then you get a bunch of armor. And then all of the bite talents are pretty strong. I guess for E build, I think the only thing is the level 16 is still super strong, and I feel like that damage bar is just kind of unnecessary. Like you're already basically looting somebody, and you don't need to like dismount them for free. If you want to dismount them, that's like pressure W. Like just make that happen, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah. Overall, I would say, definitely not S anymore. Probably tier A. Still very solid hero, especially on macro maps.
No, I mean, there's just the two biggest things like I look at like as a non-healer main. I honestly don't really care about most of these numbers. The biggest thing that like I see in at least a competitive game is that cleanse being a longer cooldown matters a lot. People play around cleanses, very important. And then the totem change with the health. I think the most frustrating part of totem build was that insane health. So seeing that nerfed kind of feels good.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Haegar maybe not going to be as prioritized heavily in these drafts anymore, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be excited for there to be a shift in, those bans in Storm League right now. It's not going to just be Joe Haegar every single match anymore. I see some maybe other heroes up there now.
Hopefully.
Yeah. We'll move on here to Whitemane. Whitemane, I'm excited about this one because we don't really get to see a lot of Whitemane. She is like very, very niche pick. Usually can deal with like burst damage really well here. But I can't say I've seen her in a competitive match months longer than that. Like it's been a while. But let's take a look here. We got Desperate Plea, her Q. Mana cost reduced from 45 to 40, and the mana cost increase per desperation reduced from 45 to 40. And we also have her Zeal armor reduction reduced from 25 to 15. Some talents that they touched here. Her level 7, Intercession. The cast range was increased from 7 to 7.5, and they removed functionality. You no longer gain a stack of Desperation. Her level 16, the Radiance, changed functionality there. Radiance's heal now reapplies Zeal, resetting its duration, but it no longer affects Whitemaine's armor. We also have the Shared Punishment, her W, chaining damage increased from 70% to 100% of Inquisition's damage. And then her Harsh Discipline, the E, additional functionality, reduce Inquisition's cooldown by 2 seconds. What does this mean for Whitemane? Are we going to see more Whitemane in our games? Is this not really going to mean too much? Thoughts?
Yo, this is all wary. I don't know how Whitemane works.
All right, Weary, take it away.
Honestly, Whitemane is probably my least played here healer in competitive. That being said, I think these changes, the baseline ones, are a lot more interesting. So she gets a bit more help on the mana department, right? So you still have to manage your mana. You can't press your Q randomly, but you do get a bit more help back there. And the minus armor 25 to 15 is also a pretty big one. As like the armor number, the bigger the number, the more like it's like exponentially more effective, right? So this means she gets hurt a lot less, but she gains like the same amount of spell power to heal herself and her allies. So that's actually a very large buff right there. Cleanse range buff, sure, like 0.5 unit is nothing game breaking. I think removing that extra stack of desperation is fine. I guess if you remember old Whitemane, you used to be able to like cleanse all your stacks and you actually gain mana back. So there was some point in that, and instead of just being like pure punishment, right? Like, oh, suddenly all of your abilities just cost more. But that part is totally fine. And then we just see some buffs across the board at 16. I would say for the meta, she probably was already in a spot where you can situationally pick her. This just makes her more pickable in those situations. So you probably just, as long as like you want to survive, and if you survive, you win, then she's probably in a pretty good spot. I would say maybe B minus tier situationally. I guess her main issue is like she doesn't have much CC, right? The most she can provide is her W, slow, and minus armor, which isn't irrelevant. It's just when it comes out a lot later, and two, it's not like hard CC.
Okay. We'll move on into the melee assassins here. We have Alorak touched. His level 1 Ruthless Momentum. Cooldown recharge bonus increased from 75% to 100%. Touched a level 4 Negatively Charged. Damage bonus per stack increased from 4% to 5%. Then also the Lightning Barrage at 16. A free cast duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Funz, I know you were practicing, well, your team was practicing some Alorak and scrims tonight. What do you think? Is this game breaking for Alorak players?
So part of me really wants to say, because I love Alorak as a hero, I really want to be like, yes, Alorak's back. Pick Alorak in all your games. You'll hard carry. But unfortunately, Alorak is still like very hard to play. I think for the Alorak mains out there, they are absolutely loving their life right now. I think so. I don't know if y'all remember, but E-Build actually got nerfed from 5% to 4%, I believe. So they basically just reverted that change. So E-Build might be back now. We typically don't see too much E-Builds. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some more E-Build play. Overall, I think Alorak players just kind of feeling themselves now. I don't really think it changes too much. I hope this inspires, maybe some of those CCL players out there. Maybe you guys should pick up some Alorak. I wouldn't mind, watching some Alorak.
I guess the only thing I'll add is E-Build is the main benefactor of this buff, right? You alluded to the sadism part. I think E-Build, I'm not an Alorak main, so this is just like secondhand information, but I've heard like if you go E-Build, the sadism part isn't really like super mandatory. You don't have to have high sadism to be impactful as long as you have a lot of stacks in the mid-late game. So, and you're really kind of just like poking and playing from safety, unless you're trying to do something different with like the level 1 talent where you go like a CDR level 1 and then you go like a Q-based build, right? So you really wouldn't like mix those together. So we'll see. I don't think this is meta breaking, but some Alorak enthusiasts will definitely continue to try to pick up, especially on maps like BOE.
All right. Moving on into our ranged assassins, the first ones we're going to look at is Cassie. Her base weapon damage is increased from 120 to 122. The level 1 charge strikes passive bonus damage increased from 15% to 20%. We also have her level 4 Ring of the Leech healing increased from 15% to 20%. We have her level 7 Seraph's Hymn cooldown reduction increased from 1.5 to 2 seconds. And last but not least, Martial Law at 16 has additional functionality. Requirement for damage bonus is also met if the target is blinded. Now, Cassia, we've kind of seen her fall out of the meta. There's been other AA heroes that have been kind of shining. They kind of touched her auto attack build here. Do you think we see a return of Cassia? Is she viable now? Has she always been and just people forget about her? What's going on? Funz, let's start with you.
Oh, my bad. Well, with Cassia, I felt she was strong enough to be played, just very niche. Just because, like, if you ever see her, she just kind of loses a lot of her kit. I personally prefer AA build on Cassia. I think AA build's actually a very solid hypercarry option, potentially. Not like hard hypercarry, but it chunks. So I'm very happy to see these auto buffs here. I think auto build Cassia might outperform Q build now. As far as like level 7s though, I'm not really sold on the W yet. Maybe if into auto attack heavy comps, you can go the W7 here. The buff that's a lot of cooldown reduction. She'll be able to pump out blinds if she's able to freely auto. Overall though, just cool buffs to see. I think this bumps her up a little bit. But I expect to see Cassie play, but not to the level we used to.
Oh, you cut out there at the end. Not to the level.
Well, not to the level we used to see Cassia.
Okay.
She used to be popular.
Weary, what's your thoughts on Cassia?
Yeah, I would agree pretty much with what Funz said. I guess the only thing is I felt like auto attack build was already better than Q build before these changes. I think over the course of like the last few patches, not like the recent ones, but more further back, Q build received a bunch of small nerfs over time, and I think it's just a little bit underpowered these days. So we look at these changes, it's mainly to the auto attack build, right? I think the auto attack level 1 is just absolutely insane. Like you just attack things and it just splashes. The level 7 change, I don't think that talent was good before, but with the 16 change, it seems like there's some built-in synergy there, where if you have more blinds, you're also proccing your 16, so you don't have to go grounding rod at 7 to do that, if that was the thing, which I've seen some players go. Overall, it remains to be seen how meta she is, but she's definitely better. I think it depends on what is the meta DPS in a particular, like, I guess, region or like rank. So if there's more gray mains, then Cassia is better, right? If there's more like poke heroes or like Hanzo or like Nara where you're just outranging her, then she's not going to be quite as good.
And that's always been a little bit of Cassia's problem, is she is outranged by so many heroes in the game, even though she is a ranged assassin herself. Well, let's keep.
Yes, I guess I'll add.
Sorry.
So if you see like Malfurion also got buffed recently, right? So if you see more Malfurions running around and trying to root you, and you really don't like getting rooted like that, then it also makes Cassia a little bit weaker.
All right, we'll keep going here. Almost to the end, but we have Chromie. We can kind of just skip over that really quickly. You can't pick Slowing Sands and ARAM anymore.
It's huge.
It's the biggest change.
ARAM is completely refined.
I'm more excited about this change than the Artemis, the Thrall, and the Nubrak. This is one of my favorite changes of the patch.
Yeah, it's game changing for you ARAMers out there. We will keep going here. Take a look at Gul'dan. He has his level 4 improved life tap. Mana restores increased from 35% to 40%. They also touch Consume Soul. Cooldown reduced from 30 to 25 seconds. Maximum charge increased from 2 to 3. Level 7 Bound by the Shadow. Cooldown reduction increased from 1.5 to 1.75 seconds. Level 13 Fell Armor. Spell Armor increased from 40 to 50. Dark Bargain. Health bonus increased from 30% to 40%. Health Stone cooldown reduced from 60 to 45 seconds. And then on the level 16, we have Rampant Hellfire. Damage bonus per stack increased from 10% to 12%. And Ruinous Affliction. Third hit damage increased from 233 to 268. I'd say lately in the meta, not a lot of mages seeing play. Maybe Mephisto, an occasional Chromie picked up. Could we see Gul'dan thrown into that mix now? We'll go with Funz.
Oh, with the Gul'dan changes, I feel like he's already viable at the moment. Possibly a little underrated and competitive. I mean, Horrify is a good button. Wave clear, good, right?
Mm-hmm.
With these changes, I think this just moves him up slightly. It's just they kind of buffed weird talents. I do really like Consume Soul now though. I was looking at this talent earlier, and I think if you have all 3 charges, you could do some like insane healing, like 1200 healing or something. It's kind of ridiculous how much healing you can get off that. Overall though, like it's just nice to see a bit more survivability. Gul'dan kind of struggles with people just hit him in the face if he ever walks up. So he'll be a bit better trading with other range assassins, which is pretty nice. I think we might see more Q builds just because of the 16 change. Overall, it buffed it by 10%, which is honestly not bad if you're just full Q building and trying to just chunk people down.
So I was wondering
Overall,
if we were going to see more E-build, because there's the Q talents that enable like the cooldown reduction on corruption and stuff like that. Do you think maybe a bit of both, or just straight Q?
I think both for sure. I don't know. I've never been a fan of E builds unless like mostly because like I guess I can't hit my E's. It's just I feel like
The
people
truth
never
comes
really.
out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I rarely see Gul'dan's like actually follow up on CC and hit all 3. I feel like it's pretty tough to do.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely did get better though, so maybe the teams that do like that E build follow up, like on Tomb of the Spider Queen, we might see a bit more E build because I know my DPS player liked E build
Okay.
already. So
Weary, what's your thoughts on Gul'dan?
Yeah, so these changes are also, I would say, like Storm League statistics based. You really don't see like W build Gul'dan running around in like hype competitive play, right? If Gul'dan appears in competitive, it's almost always Q or E build. So these changes really don't make too much sense to me. But at the same point, I don't think it's enough to make him top of the meta quite yet. Although I'll say, like, kind of like Fun said, those healing talents being buffed is a little bit under the radar potentially. You can see like some Gul'dan players use that to like bait engages onto themselves and then just heal a bunch. Right, you consume like 3 minions and then you press Healthstone and then suddenly you're full HP from like 20%.
you're basically ancestral himself.
Yeah. Between Q and E build, I think both of these are very strong, and it just kind of depends on the game or your personal playstyle. I'm still not a believer of the level 7 though. I think that talent is just really weird and they need to fix that somehow. Because one, it's not a Q talent, right? It does nothing for your Q. And if you're E build, what you really want to do is find that one big E and just one shot your enemy, and you really want the spell power to go with that.
Yeah, it's definitely awkward talent.
Okay. We'll keep going here. We've reached the end. Got last but not least, and it always scares me when I see this hero in the patch notes. But Sgt Hammer. She was touched in this recent patch. Her level 1 ambush bonus damage increased from 100% to 125%. Advanced artillery splash damage increased from 50% to 60%. And Maelstrom rounds cooldown reduced from 100 to 80 seconds. On her level 7, we have her hover siege mode. Move speed increased from 40% to 50%. The graduating range, time between increased range reduced from 2 to 1.5 seconds. And then on her level 20, shrapnel mines, maximum armor reduction increased from 30 to 50. And ultra capacitors, attack speed per stack increased from 5% to 10%. Maximum attack speed increased from 40% to 60%. I hate it. But what's your guys' take? We'll start with Weary.
I think it's just the same hero. Like, yeah, there's small buffs across the board, but I actually did play a Storm League game just before this, and you just hit him with the old Nazeebo. He he sieges up, he just throws some spiders, and then they're just gonna die really slowly.
All right.
All
um,
right,
go
I
ahead.
have a hot take, sorta. So this is kind of what I'm feeling. I feel like teams are currently in a truce with Hammer. I feel like no one's really trying to make Hammer comps work. No one's
Mm-hmm.
really trying to play Hammer comps because no one enjoys Hammer comps. No one likes to play them. They're boring AF. I don't know if I can cuss. Sorry. Um, and no one likes to play against Hammer because it's just uninteractive and not fun. I think the truce should continue. I don't really expect people to play Hammer. Maybe the occasional team will try to make it work. But I think the truce, maybe later in the CCL season, I think it might get broken. I think some teams, there's going to be maybe one or two teams that are going to try to hard abuse Hammer. I would be not surprised to see it, honestly, because the hero's still, like, the hero's not bad. The hero's not bad. And these changes were overall very nice.
What do you think, Weary? Anything to add to this?
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. Roger just dominate HRCS with Sgt Hammer. That
Yeah.
would be absolutely great.
All right, that's the end of our patch notes. There is one bug fix on haegar there. The colossal and ground totem talents are appended in the correct order, but it's not no fixes on like the game mismatch, randomly DCing, not readying. Hopefully they'll get around to that soon. That's gonna wrap up the patch notes for us. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to catch you next time.